by saying that I'm pronouncing Van Gogh wrong. Technically, it's pronounced Van Gogh, but I know that I'm totally butchering it, so why don't we just go ahead and say it the American way? For those of you who zoned out during second grade art class, I certainly don't blame you, but let me refresh your memory. If you've seen this painting, you know exactly who Van Gogh is. Anyone still have any trouble? I think we're good? Okay. Vincent Van Gogh is one of the most cherished and famous names in the visual art world. He's that guy who cut off his ear, remember him? Mm-hmm. But I'm here to say that there's more to his story than most of us knew. Most people know that Van Gogh was unappreciated as an artist in his time and, was troubled, but there's more to it than that. He was not always a painter. His first job was at an art dealership where he found great passion for art, literature, and culture. And this is where he fell in love for the first time. But when he proposed marriage, he found out that his love was one-sided. Heartbroken, Van Gogh turned his back on all of his passions, throwing all of his books away and getting fired from the dealership for telling customers not to buy art because it was worthless. It's ironic, right? But then he tried to embrace his childhood religion and tried to become a minister, but he failed with that. He didn't start painting until the age of 27, only 10 years before his death. When Van Gogh took up art as an adult, he experimented with so many different styles and mediums. He faced a lot of criticism, often from his brother. If his brother said his color palette was too dark, Van Gogh would try to lighten it up. If he said his painting wasn't lively enough, Van Gogh may simply destroy it. He seemed to depend heavily on the opinions of others that he looked up to. But later in his life is when he started looking inward and asking himself what he wanted to do. And this is when he became the painter that we all know and love. Being considered one of the most amazing artists of all time, as we do, is something that Van Gogh could never have imagined. Because to him, he was worthless, and he was pitiful. The tragedy of Van Gogh's life runs much deeper than being an unappreciated artist in his time. He spent much of his life depressed, sometimes experiencing psychosis. And I know that we've talked a lot about mental health today, so I don't think I have to stress to you how important this is. But it is most likely because of this pain that his ear became severed off. And it is most definitely because of this pain that he killed himself at the young age of 37. I find this so tragic because he had so much to give to the world. And when we're taught about Van Gogh, he's usually considered crazy. That's how I was taught anyway. I don't know about you, but I was taught, this is Van Gogh, he's a crazy dude who painted things in a funny way, cut off his own ear for no reason. But I can't stand that because crazy, use it as a joke, crazy, it does not exist in the DSM-5. In English, the word crazy is non-existent in the big book of mental disorders. That's because it's not real, obviously. But what Van Gogh went through was very real. He was suffering for so much of his life. But in that pain, he created some of the most beautiful paintings in the world. Not only was he able to find out how to really represent grief in his paintings and touch people that way, he also figured out how to, show pure joy. He said that his painting Sunflowers was sort of an apology for his earlier paintings and their cry of anguish that they depicted. He wanted to renew himself by painting something that expressed gratitude instead of pain. The painting Starry Night, perhaps his most famous painting of all, was actually painted through the barred windows of an asylum where he spent a year near the end of his life. This painting exhibits such beauty and majesty and playfulness, and it was created in a time of despair. The outcome of Van Gogh's artwork, I find, is a great instance of serendipity because he he created something so transformative to the art world, and he didn't even know it. He worked so hard just to become an artist, but he felt worthless his entire time. And though it's not an instance of, luck or chance, as serendipity is often defined, it is an instance of finding something extremely valuable when least expected. And I just feel like that's what happened when he painted. But though Van Gogh is honored today, he faced a lot of what he found to be failure in his life. Oh, sorry, I missed a part. Van Gogh was fascinated by night scenes like the Starry Night because he loved the idea of creating light from darkness. And this is something that I feel that he's done his entire life. He faced a lot of failure. Romantically, he failed. Every woman that Van Gogh ever loved left him. It's kind of a bummer. In his career, he failed. He had a really hard time holding down a job, and he did not end up where he thought he would. Pursuing the path of a minister, he failed. And as an artist in society, he failed again. There's actually only one documented painting being sold in his entire lifetime. Financially, he failed. He was poor for almost all of his life and depended on his brother Theo forever. But to us, I think he is anything but a failure. So if there's one lesson to be learned from Van Gogh's story, let it be this. Failure does not equal failure. Van Gogh faced failure so many times, but that didn't make him a failure as a person. As we know, he failed over and over in so many different areas that he considered himself a failure. The people around him considered him a failure. But he is the opposite. He is so successful in transforming people's lives today. So life is unexpected, and things don't turn out how you wish they would. But sometimes they turn into something greater. Sometimes what you find through failure is where you're meant to be. I feel like if Van Gogh were here today, a lot of us would want to grab him by the shoulders and be like, no, you are so valuable. You have inspired billions, and you are anything but worthless. And I wish he knew that, because I feel like if he knew what an impact he would have on people today, his life may not have ended so soon. Yet sometimes we find ourselves in his place. We look ourselves in the mirror and wonder, what is this person doing here? Wondering whether we have a purpose in life, wondering if people would miss us if we were gone, wondering if it's even worth it. But we have to think about this tortured artist who had no idea how worthy he is, and remember that we're all like him in a way. When Van Gogh was alive, he didn't feel like he was affecting anyone. It didn't feel like there was a reason for him being on Earth. But he's so much more powerful than he knew. Not everyone goes down in history for centuries, but that doesn't mean that you don't have an impact on the people around you and that you're any less important and significant. I think it's important to allow yourself to fail as many times as you need, because in the end, you'll look back and realize that none of those failures made you a failure. They just made you who you are. So I think it's really important to look at him and be inspired by this and just think, what if I was him? Don't you want him to know how amazing that he is, but he didn't? And I feel like that's how we should look at ourselves. Last night, after spending an entire day here practicing for this event and helping set up, because I'm also on the team, I went home and I got a Snapchat message. It was in a group chat of people going to my college next year. This girl, I don't know where she's from. I don't know her background. I don't even really know her hobbies, but I know her first name and what her Bitmoji looks like. But she opened up to us And she said, "You guys, I don't think I can do this anymore. I called the suicide hotline, but I don't think there's anything else to be done." Most people were asleep at this point because a lot of them live on the East Coast and we're a time zone ahead. But I feel so lucky that I was not asleep because I got to talk to her. I got the privilege of talking to her and bonding with her. And I went through the whole shebang, you have a purpose in this world. Things will change, you just gotta survive right now. That's all the world is asking of you. And eventually, she agreed to not do anything tonight. And I told her that she kicked this night's ass. I was gonna say butt, and then I forgot. And she won. But she said, "That's funny, because I feel like a failure." And then I thought of this, and I was like, you know who else felt like a failure? Van Gogh. And I told her that you're in a very similar place that he was. He committed suicide at 37 because he didn't think that he had a reason for being on this earth, and he just wanted to end it all. But he ended up being so much more, but he had so much left to give this world, and you have a lot to give too. And she's a fellow artist, apparently, and she loves Van Gogh, and she understands how impactful he is. And so this message touched her. And so not only do I find this an example of how Van Gogh can really affect people, it's also, I find it very serendipitous that I had the privilege of talking to this girl. I got to do more research on Van Gogh. I was thinking about Van Gogh that day, and his words got to her. And I feel like his words touched her in a way that I couldn't. And so I just think it's important, to appreciate him. But thank you. Bye.